Welcome to the Karma School of Business, a podcast about the private equity industry, business best practices, and real-time trends. I'm Sean Mooney, Bluewave's founder and CEO. In this episode, we have a fantastic conversation with Misha Logvinov, Managing Director and New York office lead with MGX. Enjoy. I am super excited to be here with Misha Logvinov. Misha, good to see you.
Good to see you as well. Happy to be here.
It's been a while. Misha and I got to know each other on kind of like the private equity conference and panel circuit, where Misha was always the one where I was like, wow, he's dropping these pearls of wisdom every time I'm with him. And so we were able to convince him to join. But I'm really excited and grateful that you're here with us today, Misha.
It's great to be here, and thanks for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to this.
As we so often do, I'd love to kick it off for our listeners here to get more of your backstory, kind of where you grew up, formative life experiences, first job out of college, kind of then how you got into PE.
I grew up in Russia, in Moscow in particular, moved to Silicon Valley right after graduating from college. Happened to do so right during the peak of the dot-com boom in the late 90s, which was definitely a perfect time for somebody who was really into computers to get into the Valley, and rode a couple of major waves in the Bay Area for 20 years, actually. And then finally switched and moved to my very favorite city in the world, which is New York City. Taking me further back, I started in technology when I was 9 years old, actually started programming back then. Over time, that grew into a lifelong passion. When I think about some of the formative years, there was a lot of entrepreneurial stuff growing up in Russia in the 90s. I guess technically my first job was my own business when I was 14 years old, which was a wholesale chocolate reseller, actually Cadbury, which many folks I'm sure know and love, brought their products to Russia for the first time. And I stumbled into that and we started selling that product quite successfully. That eventually led me to founding my second company when I was 16 that was building top-tier home theater systems, which of course played really nicely to my technical and technology aspirations. And eventually, when I was in college, I was part of a third company that was building bespoke computer systems and also starting to resell commercial software in Russia, which was a pretty interesting challenge because software copyright laws at the time weren't in place or still very nascent and not really enforced in Russia. But we kind of pioneered that in Russia at a time, which was a lot of fun and a lot of interesting challenges. That unfortunately all took some toll on my studies when I was in college because I was essentially working full-time at the same time. But I managed through it, and in hindsight, I wouldn't trade that for anything. Then, when I was in the Valley, essentially I worked for 20 years as a technology operator, starting on the technical track, was a CIO and ran technology for a while, eventually pivoted or shifted or extended, I should say, to various business tracks as well, was a chief customer officer at a couple companies and also helped run strategy and corporate development. And eventually joined private equity as a digital operating partner initially. First, I joined the European private equity firm called EQT and spent close to 5 years there, and eventually moved to Mubadala and now MGX.
I mean, that's an amazing story of entrepreneurial kind of spirit at such a young age. And I think so many business builders have that in different kind of ways, shapes, and form. And that's almost something, as I am fortunate to do these calls, you kind of see these kernels as a kid. You're kind of just drawn to it. What was it you think as a kid that got you into starting companies as just like a wee little Misha?
Yeah, necessity probably. I mean, mid-90s, early 90s in Russia was a tough place. Really fascinating place at a fascinating point in time. But if you wanted to make money, if you wanted to succeed in life, you had to take control of your own destiny to an extent, especially when I was still in my teen years. Plus, a couple of entrepreneurial friends around me who were up for doing this journey with me. But looking back at it, I mean, I wish I can tell you I was wise beyond my years at the time. But the honest answer is it was just luck, right? Meeting the right people at the right time and feeling like I had to do something because it was a really exciting time when the wall came down and all the businesses were popping up around me. And it was like, why not? And why not now? And let's just try and do it. And one thing led to another and ultimately brought me to Silicon Valley.
It's kind of interesting. You've seen kind of these really tectonic historical waves of innovation and kind of entrepreneurial unleashments. Of one, like you said, when Russia was opened up to the entire world all of a sudden, and you could do all these great things. And then jumping from that wave into like the late 90s in Silicon Valley was another one where it's just like, holy mackerel, these are historic shifts. What was it like? You go from that one to the next kind of tidal wave coming through again in the Silicon Valley where like legends were made.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a fascinating experience because, I came to Silicon Valley in 1997 when it was definitely getting pretty frothy, but it still hasn't reached its peak. So I rode that wave to its crest, which I think was late 2000, early 2001. And then it precipitously crashed shortly after. No, it was just nothing short of excitement, working extremely hard at a time and still to this day, never really slowed down and just seeing this phenomenal growth happening around me. But in a lot more, I would say, sustainable, safe, sane environment than when I was growing up in Russia when it was a bit crazy. Definitely wild time. The waves haven't stopped since then, right? Was the internet boom, of course, in the late 90s, early 2000s, then a bit of a lull after the dot com crash. And then again, super exciting times in the Valley at a time in like late 2000s, right? With mobile and social becoming very prominent. And now we're riding yet another wave, which is probably bigger than anything I've ever seen before, which says a lot.
I completely agree. At least in my lifetime, it seems like it's the same thing riding the internet through as a child of the 70s, 80s, 90s, and then seeing cloud come, which was more of like a ripple. And now you see the biggest wave of all coming through. And I say it's 80% absolutely exciting and 20% terrifying. And maybe we'll get into that in a little bit. And then before we do that, maybe I'm curious about what was that transition that kind of got you from kind of fast growing startups, kind of maybe a little earlier stages, and now you're in the thing that's a thing now in a big way, but different in kind of technology, private equity versus maybe the earlier stage venture capital kind of flavors of things.
Yeah. So a lot of people ask me this question: how did you get to PE? The answer is definitely by luck to an extent. I never envisioned myself in private equity when I was in the Valley. I was surrounded by entrepreneurs and technologists and also venture capitalists. So I definitely thought about like, hey, wouldn't it be cool to potentially transition more in the VC role at some point? But I haven't considered private equity because at least at the time it wasn't as pronounced in Silicon Valley, or at least not in my circles. The way it worked out, right, is first, I mean, I worked most of my 20-year tenure in Silicon Valley and hyper growth, kind of small and mid-sized startups and taking them through some of that growth onto the next level. What I haven't done at the time is to work at a much larger organization, established organization. And that's when an opportunity at Oracle presented itself. And I went for a couple of years to help run their Oracle cloud infrastructure business in North America, which was still somewhat at its infancy at then. That led me to some additional connections and networks. And finally, a good friend of mine joined EQT at a time as a partner, and looking at my background, gave me a call and said, hey, they're really looking for people like you to help develop their digital strategy and start working systematically with their portfolio companies. You should go talk to them, which I've done. And I love these guys and ended up cutting the cord in the Valley, left Oracle and joined the QT and never looked back. Right. So I'm now 7+ years into this journey, and it's been nothing but fascinating. And I'm absolutely in love with my job.
I love it. I mean, there's all sorts of things that I thought I knew a lot about you that I didn't know, and I've learned here, which is very interesting. And maybe if we were to do one more kind of peeling back of the proverbial onion, Misha, what would be one more thing and we'd know you better if we knew this about you?
I'm a foodie. I love sharing meals with my friends, my family. We're just folks I want to get to know. Going to a great restaurant in New York City, by the way, I am biased, but I will say it anyway. I think New York is the best place to eat in the world. I've tried a lot of different places. We should go share a meal together. Maybe after that, we should go to a rock concert somewhere in New York. Or if you're not into rock music or not much of a foodie, we should go outdoors and perhaps climb a mountain together. And I think you will get to know me a lot better that way.
If you look at, and I agree, New York is very, very, very hard to beat in terms of just not only the quality of the food experience, but just the breadth and depth. And every little part of New York's almost like a different city. What is one of your kind of favorite places that you would say, here's a place you should look up?
Oh, that's impossible question to answer. You should see my Google Maps. It's like filled with milestones and waypoints and dots and flags that I marked from all my experiences in New York. There are thousands of them. I wouldn't be able to pinpoint one thing. I think I have different New York experiences that I love to do depending on the time of the year and how much time I have. Among that, of course, as I mentioned, like eat out. There's no place like that in the world. I think music scene in New York is absolutely incredible that caters to everybody, right? So I like to go to like small venues, jazz clubs, rock concerts, so sometimes Madison Square Garden, right? If I'm up for something much more epic. I love art, so art scene in New York is also, of course, world famous. So some of my favorite things to do in New York would be museum hopping or maybe going to Chelsea, running from one gallery to another. There are like hundreds of them in there. It seems like while hopping onto High Line and walking up and down that there's just the list goes on. I'm in New York, never disappoints. I'm never getting bored here. And I've been here on and off for 27 years, living full time now for 8. I literally never get bored by the city. I think this is a love affair that will always be with me for the rest of my life. So if you're not from New York, you're looking to come visit, look me up and I'll give you good advice.
I love it. Before my Blue Wave adventure, I'd spent nearly 20 years living in the New York area. And even to this day, with our kids who are getting older, we feel like we didn't even scratch the surface. And we were like, oh my goodness, we never really lived there as a tourist to do all the things. It was one of the great kind of regrets I had. And so we're like gearing up to take the kids back and say, we're going to do all the things, not only the stuff we love, but all the stuff we never did that we wished we had. So it kind of warms my heart hearing this. Hi, this is Sean. Wanted to take a quick moment to tell you a little bit why Blue Wave exists. It's based on this whole notion that assessing opportunities and building businesses is really hard. We all know third-party expert service providers can dramatically help, but at the same time, it's hard to know who's good. Usually leaving you like I would do and call friends and ask, do you know someone who does this? Or just go the square peg round hole route. So after nearly 20 years in PE, I decided to solve my own problem and created Blue Wave. Today, many hundreds of PE firms, thousands of portcos, leading public companies, private companies, all call Blue Wave to instantly get connected with the exact third-party service provider they want that's pre-credentialed by Blue Wave and perfectly calibrated for their need and really good. You too can give us a call or visit our website at bluewave.net. We're free to use and you can benefit the same way other top PE firms do. Back to the show. And so, Misha, maybe if we turn the page here on our conversation, one of the things I love when I have the opportunity to speak with people like you is kind of to get an insight into kind of the elements of value. And so you're fortunate to have not only been an operator in some of the world's best companies, but also now a private equity professional, and you get to see this amazing kind of landscape from both high altitude and low altitude, something that very few get to do. So I'm interested to hear what are some of the traits when you see a company and you look at it and say, this is a company that could be good or really could be amazing and excellent. Here are some of the things that I'm looking for is like that kind of could be or will be amazing.
Yeah, I would highlight 3 key things. There's, of course, a much longer list, but I always default to these 3 to begin with. First, it's people. It's always people, right? And I would say specifically leadership team and the quality of that team, starting with the CEO and one level down. In my experience, no matter how good is your business strategy or idea behind it, it's ultimately the people who make them real. That would be the first thing I would look at. Second thing is historical track record of delivering results and also being able to adapt and be agile, especially during times of significant change or adversity, whether it's COVID type of events or market downturn or even acquisition by a strategic bio or a private equity firm. Like, how does the company react to it? And are they able to pivot, expand, and just adapt to the situation while continuing to deliver and grow? So that would be another factor that I would typically look at. And of course, me being a technologist, right? In this day and age, I believe that technical acumen and robust technology infrastructure are absolutely critical for being able to scale the business. Of course, also right now, it is really critical for having it in order to take full advantage of artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies. and also being able to protect your business from disruption, of course. That said, I'm not looking for a perfect technical setup, especially in PE. In my experience, such a thing doesn't exist, right? In the real world, there's always some degree of legacy, some degree of transformation, but I'm really looking for evidence of companies taking technology seriously and also taking some concrete steps towards enablement when it comes to technology, data, and nowadays AI.
I love so much of what you said. And for all of you kind of thinking about business school, you save your money. Just listen to what Misha just said. And there's some really good stuff there. And one, it's business and people, they're intertwined. And without really good people, you're not going very far. And it's interesting. So it's been fascinating in this second part of my business life, going from a PE investor to an operator now. In our business, Misha, we're this kind of super connective kind of market network for PE. And as much as we're getting reams of calls for AI and tech today, we still is 2 to 3 to 1 for people. It just shows you like you're not going anywhere without the right people to drive the ship. And then the second thing that I thought you brought up that was really insightful was this idea that a lot of people measure their candidates and the acumen of the company when the tide is rising and all boats are just kind of smooth sailing, the wind's at their back. And kind of what you just mentioned there about like, how do they do both the people and the company when times are tough? Do they have that tenacity, that grit, that resilience? Because nothing is up and to the right forever. A lot of companies, what goes up goes down. It's the ones that continue to go up when everyone else is going down that are the real amazing ones. The third thing that I think you really brought up that is a lot of people kind of sleep on is not just the technology itself, but what I loved how you mentioned the infrastructure. It's the foundation. And we'll get all these calls from like CEOs of the portcos and like, we want to talk about neural networks. They're like, okay, well, how about first we get you Snowflake and like Sigma and like give you some areas that like let's get your data structured. Let's get a process in place so you keep it in high quality ways. And then let's visualize it and analyze it. And then we'll talk neural networks. But let's get the stack in place. Make sure you're maintaining it like you would like a highly honed piece of equipment. And that's where I think a lot of people lose it because it's garbage in, garbage out if you don't have the real foundation for success to do the really cool stuff afterwards.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Can't agree more.
Hey, as a quick interlude, this is Sean here. Wanted to address one quick question that we regularly get. We often get people who show up at our website, call our account executives and say, hey, I'm not private equity. Can I still use Blue Wave to get connected with resources? And the short answer is yes. Even though we're mostly and largely used by hundreds of private equity firms, thousands of their portfolio company leaders, every day we get calls from everyday top proactive business leaders at public companies, independent companies, family companies. So absolutely, you can use this as well if you want to use the exact same resources that are trusted and being deployed and perfectly calibrated for your business needs. Give us a call. Visit our website at bluewave.net. Thanks. Back to the episode. So one of the things I'm curious as it relates to these kind of elements of value, Misha, is I'd love to learn more about how MGX kind of approaches value creation, what you all are bringing to your portfolio companies as they take action to be the best that they can be, kind of acknowledging what you said, like they don't always start off as like perfect. And so how do you help them kind of get to their best next version?
Maybe at first as the overall kind of framing for this, MGX is a focused AI and advanced technology investor. So we invest in the full stack of AI ecosystem from semiconductors to infrastructure like data centers that host AI workloads to going up the stack to data layer to the software layer. And also we're looking after advanced technologies like robotics or crypto even. So we're a very focused technology investor with myopic focus on AI. So naturally, we see technology and specifically AI as one of our most differentiated value creation angles. Now, speaking more broadly, first of all, we subscribe to so-called pool approach with portfolio companies, management teams, as opposed to push, right? What that means is that we're positioning our operating partner capabilities as essentially necessary and for outperformance of the business as opposed to being an imposition on the management team. Like, you don't have to use that, but it's in your best interest to take full advantage of what we're bringing to the table. So ultimately, our job in this setup is first of all, develop highly impactful and differentiated capabilities that would drive real value, and then inspire, educate, influence, and ultimately enable management teams to take full advantage of them in order to accelerate their business growth. When it comes to specific things that we would bring forward, it's of course situation dependent. Depends on where the company is at with some of those things and what do we deem the most impactful value creation levers. But some examples of that would include support with recruiting of the leadership team, kind of going back to the people point. If there are any gaps on the leadership team, or if there's an opportunity to level it up, we're going to bring best practices, relationships with recruiters, access to our networks, and so on and so forth. But we wouldn't stop there when it comes to people. We would also look at org design. Is the organization optimally designed for success and has the right balance between full-time employees and external partners and contractors? And we could look at things like location strategies as well. What are some of the most optimal and cost-effective places to operate, right? So that would be one example. Another example would be operational and financial excellence. Lots of things in this scope, but ultimately, what are some of the levers to reduce capex and opex while also increasing performance, right? Things like procurement will go into this, or if it's a major capital project, which we see quite a bit in our line of work because we're investing in real operations, especially when you look at things like semiconductors or data centers. There's ample opportunity to drive value there. So that would be another example. Then going to tech, right, kind of where I started, it's really helping portfolio companies, first of all, assess their AI value creation potential and gauge their level of maturity and readiness, and then help them develop roadmap and also help them accelerate in its execution. Now, we're not a consultancy, we're not an operator. Our mandate is not to operate portfolio companies that we invest in, but we could help get companies kind of from 0 to 1, or like catalyze some of the things that they're doing, both with our internal capabilities and resources, and also by bringing some external advisors and highly curated partners, whether it's technology companies or consultancies. So we invest quite a bit as well in developing these partnerships and also developing relationships with individual expert advisors that can provide some asymmetric impact on the businesses we introduce them into. So these are some of the examples that we typically bring to bear.
A, I love the focus of your firm. And then B, I like the holistic, curated way that you're helping them while also not kind of like, this is the only way. It's like you're there to help, but not necessarily prescribe everything that needs to happen. That's, I think, what many businesses are looking for in a partner. And I think you all have taken next level, particularly given the focus that you have as a firm. Maybe with that in mind, Misha, I'm curious, what are some of the top pieces of advice that you and your colleagues are offering your portfolio companies today to kind of successfully manage this time, not only for safety, but also for success?
Yeah, I would say a couple of things. First of all, prioritize your data. Truly understand what data do you have today already across the business. It could be scattered all over the place, but it's really important to understand the landscape of your data today. Also, how much of this data do you own, or how much of it is owned by, let's say, your customers, your partners? Ultimately, do you have a sustainable differentiation with your existing data, or how do you create it? Also, looking at how to best organize it, govern it, and what are some of the opportunities that you could unlock with your data, whether it's direct or indirect monetization opportunity, right? So, number one would be data, very often overlooked. You really have, I think, tremendous opportunity for a lot of businesses out there to establish a real data moat. The second one is investing and thinking through how AI can really impact your business, both as a disrupting force, essentially putting your business at risk. Do you have the right to win in the quote unquote post AI world? And also as a force for driving growth. How do you go proactively about addressing it? And this means evolving your strategy, leadership, talent, partnerships, technology, all those things that we've talked about. Because I truly believe that if you want to survive and thrive as a business over the next decade, embracing AI is not optional at all. And it has to be prioritized now, not 2 or 3 years from now, if you want to have a head start.
Amen. I think those are both really good ones. The first point, just double tapping on the data. I think most people way underestimate the work that has to go into make sure you have it structured the right way. You keep it clean. It's one of those things that a lot of people don't realize. It deteriorates like an asset in a manufacturing facility. in making sure it's structured in a way that you can make some cakes with the ingredients. That's really important. And then your point on AI, it's just there's a lot of people right now that are kind of curling up in resisting this change, not wanting it to occur. And you can either kind of run towards it and thrive with it and get going now, or your ultimately change is going to win. It's such a great piece of advice. And it's not just the tech companies that need to be doing this.
Any company, any company.
In your mind, what is a way that even like a traditional old economy company can kind of just get started and take that first step?
Yeah, I mean, I always look at any value creation and AI in particular in three dimensions that I think any private equity professional would relate to well. One of them, can you drive top line growth? Can you drive revenue of the company? And that can be achieved both organically and inorganically, of course, right? You could build new products, AI enabled, or you could also acquire AI native businesses that will bring new revenue stream into your company. So there's a whole variety of ways you could achieve top line growth with AI. The second bucket is driving your bottom line growth, right? Doing margin expansion. This is probably the first great place to start for any business. And there are ample opportunities for improving productivity. I think we're all hopefully by this point use ChatGPT and other AI chatbots to just simplify our personal lives, right? The same can apply to almost any repetitive business task out there. Personally, I mean, I use AI probably 4 or 5 hours a day, like intensely. The amount of time it's saving me and helping me run faster is just incredible, right? If you instrument that at scale across your workforce, you're going to see pretty immediate benefits. And the technology is so great already that adoption, at least in my experience, is quite organic across the workforce. Of course, there are some pretty obvious use cases that almost any organization can implement, such as augmenting customer support, right? Improving your cost of service, automating things like procurement, automating your business processes where you have a lot of manual kind of human glue today, and the list goes on. And the third dimension is so-called multiple expansion, right? For folks who are not directly involved in private equity, what this means, right, is that you typically underwrite your investment as a private equity firm with a particular multiple attached to their EBITDA. And then you will carry that through the end of your underwrite, and then you will exit, and then you will assign some multiple to the exit EBITDA. And that's how you will calculate ultimately the valuation of this business. So, can you meaningfully expand that multiple during the course of your ownership of the business? And I think AI actually has a tremendous opportunity to drive multiple expansion over time because you could take some of the legacy businesses or businesses in more traditional industries and turn them into maybe not all the way AI native, but at least highly AI enabled businesses, or expand them to different business lines and introduce new revenue streams that didn't exist before, and also de risk the business and enable it for the next phase of evolution post AI, right? You could imagine a scenario where public markets or private buyers, whether it's other private equity firms or strategic acquirers, would assign a premium on businesses like that. And you might see expansion on the multiple that you ultimately underwrote. So I think all three of those things would be in play and I in play with AI. But the easiest one to get going with would be improving productivity and efficiency of the business and ultimately driving real cost savings in the company as well as productivity.
You're so spot on. And I think a lot of the people that are probably having the hardest time adopting this are people like my age, the executives in companies, and just the idea of just like use ChatGPT. Everyone I talk to, put the app on your phone, have conversations with it. This sounds really pathetic, but ChatGPT is kind of my best friend now. And so like, I talk to it on the way
Yeah,
home.
I need to think about who I'm gonna offend if I said the same thing, but I don't disagree with you at all. People's like, well, how do I get into it? I'm like, listen, if you use search, right? If you use Google, if you know how to make a Google query, you're basically ready to go when it comes to using AI. And again, the tech has advanced tremendously over the last 2 years where it's accessible to a point where I showed my mom ChatGPT. She was blown away and she wants to use that, right? So, and she's over 80 years old now. We're now at the cusp of true mass adoption of this tech.
It's like put the app on your phone and there's a little waveform and just talk to it. I chose a guy not to cause marital issues, and so my friend is kosher, and so we. But I'm like the cliche of cliches. I was literally talking to it to ChatGPT about the Roman Empire on the drive home. It's a great way to start because you start realizing the power in real life. The productivity gains are amazing. And in our business now is about the size of one of the portfolio companies that I used to have. And the power that we have that brings to us, who already kind of embrace the strategic value of purposely constraining things, is our software and tech development team are now doing things in minutes that literally 6 months ago would have taken months. And it is unbelievable. Our back office, the automation that we're able to do, and this is maybe some of the societal things we have to figure out, is we're going to have to hire maybe a fraction of the people we previously did to drive our growth. Every day and every month, we're certainly hiring new people here, but that curve related to the growth and development is so much more different than it would have been even like 2 years ago. And so if you're an entrepreneur or you're getting ready to invest, it is such an exciting time to be a business builder.
100%. I like this. Forgot where I borrowed that framework, but I really liked it. I think it's called ARC, ARC, but it can really be applied to any emerging technology and AI in particular. But what it stands for is like the first you go through the augmentation phase, which is the A, right? You augment what you do. You perhaps don't spend as much time doing some repetitive things, right? Improve productivity, improve efficiency, improving quality of life. So that's a pretty exciting phase. And I think we're by and large still in that phase when it comes to AI. The R in the ARC is replace. That's when you get to more complex kind of decisions. When now you actually, the technology got to a point where it's as good or better than some of the things that we do as humans. And that creates, of course, opportunity to wholesale replace some of these things. Like as we discussed, things like probably level one customer service, right? As it would be a great example of that. Terrifying stage, right? Because this would disrupt people's lives to some extent. And it takes courage, it takes tenacity, it takes a lot of change management to get through it effectively. But we have numerous examples when we started that and went through that successfully as a society. And finally, there is the C, right, which is create, which I don't think we're quite there yet, right? We're somewhere in between augment and replace today when it comes to AI. But create is when you create jobs and opportunities that never existed before. And that could actually be quite exponential. I mean, if you look today at jobs that were created ultimately by invention of internet and mass adoption of the internet in the 90s, fast forward to today, there are probably hundreds of millions of jobs that would not have existed without it. Looking back 30 years ago, wouldn't have imagined anything like that. And I venture to say that we can't even properly imagine what the post-AI world would look like and the amount of job and opportunity it's going to create. So I'm very optimistic when it comes to that. And I think we will see pretty tremendous potential getting unlocked in the next decade.
I think it's a very good point in terms of the other side of this wave and this transition is actually lots of opportunity for hundreds of millions of people. And so it's coming. And I think those who run towards it are going to be the ones who benefit first. That's, I think, an excellent perspective. With all of this in mind, and as we kind of turned in almost to the more introspective part of our conversation, I'd love to know if you could go back to your 22-year-old self and give 22-year-old Misha a piece of advice who 22-year-old Misha probably wouldn't listen to. But just in case, what would be one of those pieces of advice that you'd share that you wish you knew then?
Yeah, I don't know if I would have listened to that advice, but it would be to just be nicer to people around me. I was quite driven and remain quite driven to this day. I don't know the other way. But as I've learned over the years, there are a lot better ways to go about achieving high performance and be just genuinely nice to people around you. I wish I could go back and just tell myself to chill out and embrace all the opinions that surround me. And I think I would have probably listened to at least some part of it.
I think it's a great piece of advice. I think it's one that a lot of people who listen to this will probably kind of look and kind of nod to themselves because it's so easy to get caught up in this race that you perceive that you're in. I would get caught in the same thing. It wasn't that I was not trying to hurt people's feelings or be abrupt, but you're just kind of like running and you just, your eyes are down. When you say that, it kind of makes me look back and say, just chill out, dude. It's like, you're going to get there. It's all going to be good. Tap your brake. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Maybe with this kind of advice in mind, one of the things that I think all of us agree is the best business builders in the world are kind of voracious readers and borrowers of other people's lessons hard earned and learned. And so I'm interested, Misha, to see, is there a book that you've read that you've had an impact on you and maybe a takeaway?
I wish I could read more business books nowadays. I just don't have the time. So I consume my business knowledge through bite sized chunks, whether it's podcasts on the way to work or on the train or news articles or even ChatGPT. I get a lot of news that way. Instead of maybe pointing out to a business book, which I've read plenty of, and there are a lot of really great ones, I will maybe highlight a personal book that was particularly impactful to me and also to some of the folks I introduced it to. I had kids just under 3 years ago, and I had twins, which was a very transformative experience for me and my wife. One of the things that we've learned very quickly that we really have to focus on sleep, their sleep first and then our sleep second. So recently I gave away a copy of basically the same book to a few of my colleagues who had newborn kids. And it is about sleep training, and it's called 12 Hours Sleep by 12 Weeks Old. It was written by Susie Giordano. I have to say, we didn't quite get to 12 hours of sleep, but we came pretty close with our kids. I think they're sleeping like 10 to 12 hours a night on the typical night. And they've been doing it since they were 3 months old. So this was absolutely game changing for me personally. Now I've heard some good feedback from some of my colleagues who use the same technique, that they managed to get their kids to start sleeping as well. I mean, I think we all know that, right? That first our kids sleep, and of course, just as importantly, our own sleep is so incredibly important for both our physical and mental health. I found this book to be just a perfect, easy to digest guide for how to basically engineer sleep with our children and then regain a bit of sanity in our own lives. So I can't recommend this book strongly enough. If you are about to have kids, pay close attention. I think it's going to change your life.
We have a number of my colleagues here, including one who just had a beautiful baby son this week. I'm going to add that to the list of kind of nice things we do for people. And so shout out to Matt. You got a nice gift coming, because I think those are all things that we all try to figure it out. And then my real question for you, Misha, is does that work for adults too?
Yeah, not as well. Not as well. I think we just need to slow down in order for it to work effectively, which many of us, myself included, have a very hard time doing.
If you can solve my 2 a.m. in the morning witching hour where I'm staring at the ceiling thinking about things, I'll be forever grateful. That's one that we'll save for the next conversation. So, Misha, this has really been an incredible conversation. I very much appreciate it. I've learned all sorts of things I wish I knew before, and that's a tremendous gift. So thank you so much for sharing your time, insights, and wisdom here with us today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it.
That's all we have for today. Special thanks to Misha for joining. If you'd like to learn more about Misha Logvinov and MGX, please see the episode notes for links. Please continue to look for the Karma School of Business podcast anywhere you find your favorite podcasts. We truly appreciate your support. If you like what you hear, please follow, 5-star rate, review, and share. This is a free way to support the show, and it really helps us when you do this, so thank you in advance. In the meantime, if you want to be connected with the world's best-in-class private equity-grade professional service providers, independent consultants, interim executives that are deployed and trusted by the best business builders in the world, including many hundreds of top private equity firms, thousands of portfolio and independent companies, and you can do the same whether or not you're in private equity, give us a call or visit our website at bluewave.net. That's BLUWAVE, and we'll support your success. Onward. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the individuals presenting and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any other persons or entities, including those referenced herein. No representations, warranties, financial, legal, tax, or other advice are made herein. Consult your advisors regarding any topics discussed during this episode.